So, if you're feeling incredibly frustrated with the current housing market and you're desperately looking for a smarter path to home ownership, well, you are definitely in the right place today. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a massive, game-changing strategy for 2026. It's called the $0 cash down method, and we're going to see exactly how tapping into raw land equity might literally be the secret to finally building your dream home.
Right off the bat, we've got to ask, is the traditional path to home ownership just completely broken at this point? Honestly, it's a question so many of us are wrestling with right now. I mean, we've all been there, right? Endlessly doom-scrolling through Zillow, staring at these headlines screaming about 6.5% interest rates like it's some sort of financial death sentence. It's just so frustrating. The source material we're diving into today basically argues that, yeah, the traditional path is officially broken. And you know what? It is absolutely time to rethink the whole entire process. And really, here's the main reason why that traditional path is so broken. $100,000. Think about that number for a second. Most people out there are operating under this painful, outdated assumption that they somehow need to stockpile massive amounts of cold, hard cash, like $100,000, literally just to get their foot in the door. But here's the massive problem with that. While you're tirelessly scraping by, trying to save up that giant pile of cash, inflation is just quietly eating your lunch. It's like running a race where the finish line just keeps getting pushed further and further away.
So, we're really looking at a pretty stark contrast in strategies here. On one side, you have this total losing battle, right? Trying to fight off those 6.5% interest rates and relentless inflation by just hoarding cash in a bank account. But the absolute smartest buyers in 2026, they aren't draining their savings accounts anymore. No way. They are pivoting. They're turning to a completely different, frankly brilliant resource. They are leveraging raw dirt.
And you know, this shift isn't just happening out of nowhere. If you look around, traditional housing inventory is leaning super heavily toward dense, corporate-owned townhomes and duplexes. It's getting to the point where an affordable, standalone single-family home feels like this crazy luxury that's totally out of reach for regular folks. But by stepping outside of that standard real estate gridlock, we actually enter what's being called the creator economy of alternative housing. It's a complete paradigm shift.
Which brings us to Section 1, the land equity goldmine, where we look at your property as collateral.
Okay, so this whole concept really hinges on something called the land equity construction loan. Now, this is essentially a financing loophole, and let me tell you, traditional banks rarely, if ever, advertise this. But here's the deal. If you own a piece of land outright, or even if you just have significant equity in it, you are actually sitting on a financial goldmine. Your property is not just someplace to, pitch a tent or park a trailer on the weekends. It is your financial collateral. A lot of modern lenders in 2026 will actually count the appraised value of that land directly as your required equity deposit. That literally means you can completely bypass the need to bring a massive cash down payment to the closing table.
So let's look at Section 2, the zero down math explained. Let's talk about how to actually show up with $0 in cash.
All right, most people just naturally assume they're going to need, say, 20% in cold hard cash to even think about securing a construction loan. But let's run the numbers. Let's say you want to build a custom home. Maybe a cool shipping container house, or even a tiny home, right? And your total build cost is going to be $200,000. Well, if your land appraises at $50,000, lenders will literally use that $50,000 land value as your 20% deposit, because $50,000 is exactly 20% of that $200,000 build. So the land itself covers the entire equity requirement for you. It's honestly amazing.
To break that down into really clear, actionable steps, it flows chronologically kind of like this. Step 1, you own the land outright. Step 2, you go out and get that land's value officially appraised. And then Step 3, you use that appraised value directly as your 20% deposit. By following this exact sequence with a land equity construction loan, you're entirely bypassing that crazy cash requirement and, more importantly, you are protecting your hard-earned savings. Moving right along to Section 3, traditional mortgages versus alternative builds, a clear comparison.
When you look at these two options side by side, the comparison is honestly staggering. On the traditional mortgage side, they're demanding 10 to 20% in cash, but the land equity build, zero cash out of pocket. Traditional builds are going to lock you into incredibly strict suburban zoning laws, whereas alternative builds really thrive on flexible, rural, and off-grid friendly zoning. And what about speed to equity? A traditional mortgage ties you down for 15 to 30 years before you really see any meaningful equity. But the land equity strategy, it gives you immediate equity the second you combine your land and your build value. And finally, your long-term debt load drops from this heavy, 30-year financial ball and chain to a vastly lower load that's completely optimized for alternative living costs.
Now, of course, there's always a catch, right? If you walk into your standard big box bank today and you drop the word barn dominium or off-grid, you will literally watch the loan officer start sweating through their shirt. Raw, off-grid, homestead, or cabin land, that is the ultimate frontier for affordable housing right now. But traditional banks, they just aren't set up to smoothly finance this new creator economy of housing. They want safe, cookie-cutter solutions, not innovation.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the owner financing land hack. Here's how we're bypassing the banks.
Look, if traditional banks refuse to play ball, we're just going to go right around them. The source material highlights landlimited.com as the ultimate key to getting through this bottleneck. They actually offer hassle-free owner financing that makes real sense for your budget. We're talking absolutely no credit checks required, super low down payments, and it basically allows you to finally get off the sidelines. You keep more of your actual cash in your pocket, and you can start building equity on your land right away.
This whole approach creates a really effective long-term roadmap for us. Think of it like this. Step 1. You secure the land directly via owner financing, meaning you skip all that standard bank red tape entirely. Step 2. You start making your payments and building up the equity in that piece of land. And finally, Step 3. Once you own the land outright, that equity becomes your ultimate leverage to pull the trigger on a construction-to-permanent loan with a builder. It is such a smart, strategic play.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important takeaway for this explainer. Your path to debt-free alternative living starts with the ground beneath your feet. It's a powerful thought, and it really forces us to ask a critical question. Are you going to keep draining your savings, stressing out over 6.5% interest rates, and paying rent to a landlord who literally couldn't care less about your financial future? Or are you going to start leveraging the ground beneath your feet to actually build the life you want? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, keep building, and I will catch you next time.